At this time, Lisa Young will take a roll call to see if a quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please respond. Walter Bouchard.
This is Taylor Campbell Mosley as proxy for Walter Bouchard.
Thank you. Zachary Dorn.
This is Zachary Dorn.
Zachary Dorn.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Beverly Chanowski.
Present.
Thank you. Eric Massey. Tom Ekron.
Present.
Thank you. Kim Anderson.
Present.
Thank you. Mike Esquivel.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenya Lugo Waite. Mark Ortiz. Dan Cisco. Jacob McDavid. Megan Sheldon.
Present.
Thank you. Pete Burrell. Spencer Camps. Rick Williams.
Here.
Thank you. Kim Butler.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Clements.
Present.
Thank you. Mike Baez. Jennifer Peterson.
Here.
Thank you. Nancy Allen.
Here.
Thank you. Anu Jane.
Here.
Thank you. Ben Davis. Ryan Templeton.
Present.
Thank you. Tim Connor. Brody Lynn.
Present.
Thank you. Jonathan Fudge.
Present.
Thank you. Christina Hopes.
Present.
Thank you. Aaron Daughtery. Arden Holloway.
Present.
Thank you. Susie Stevens.
Present.
Thank you. Gregory Arrington. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist with any questions you may have. If you parked in the garage, a validation stamp is available on the counter. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available for MAG staff. Move on to our second item, which is a call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items or items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience unless the chair requests an exception. I have not received any requests to speak cards for a call to the audience. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. MAG staff, have we received any online written comments for the call to the audience?
Madam Chair, one written comment was received and it has been provided to the committee in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal minutes of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Our next item is approval of the July 24th, 2025 meeting minutes. Does any member of the committee have questions on this item? Hearing none, prior to approval of the meeting minutes, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment. I have not received any requests for this agenda item. MAG staff, have you received any online written comments for this item?
Madam Chair, no online written comments were received.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item agenda number 3?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Megan Sheldon from the City of Glendale. I move to approve the meeting minutes of July 24th, 2025.
Thank you, Megan. Do we have a second?
This is Tim Connor, City of Scottsdale. I make the second.
Thank you, Tim. We have a motion from Megan Sheldon and a second from Tim Connor. A roll call vote will be taken at this time by Lisa Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please state your vote. Taylor Combs Mosley.
Aye.
Thank you. Zachary Dorn.
Aye.
Thank you. Beverly Chanowski.
Aye.
Thank you. Tom Ekron.
Aye.
Thank you. Kim Anderson.
Abstain.
Thank you. Mike Esquivel.
Abstain.
Thank you. Kenya Lugo Wait. Mark Ortiz. Dan Cisco. Jacob McDavid. Megan Sheldon.
Aye.
Thank you. Pete Burrell. Spencer Camps. Rick Williams.
A.
Thank you. Kim Butler.
Aye.
Thank you. Nicole Clements.
Aye.
Thank you. Mike Baez. Jennifer Peterson.
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy Allen.
Aye.
Thank you. Anu Jane.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair Simpson.
Aye.
Thank you. Ben Davis. Ryan Templeton.
Aye.
Thank you. Tim Connor.
Aye.
Thank you. Brody Lynn.
Aye.
Thank you. Jonathan Futch.
Aye.
Thank you. Christina Lopez.
Approve.
I'm sorry, Christine.
Approve.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aaron Daughtery. Arden Holloway.
Aye.
Thank you. Susie Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you. Gregory Arrington. Did I miss anyone? Mr. Connor, you have your hand up?
Yes, I don't know if anybody else.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
I'm still having trouble. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, the motion passes with one abstention.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, modeling analysis for the Clean Air Act, Section 179, big B, little b, retrospective demonstration of the impact of international emissions on ozone concentrations in the Maricopa non-attainment area. This item is on the agenda for action and will be presented by Matt Poppin from Maricopa Association of Governments and Chris Emery and Marco Rodriguez from Ramble.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee. Yes, we're getting near the finish line of this work, and I just want to say thank you for all of the feedback we have received on this. And today I'm really excited to present the modeling analysis for inclusion in this report. And most of today's item will be handled by Ramble, but I want to give just a couple overview items before we jump into it. Just as a reminder, if we take a big step back again, what's the purpose of the Clean Air Act 179B little b demonstration? Well, we have to remember that currently our ozone non-attainment area has been classified as a moderate area, and we had an attainment date of August 3rd, 2024. Current ozone monitoring data indicates that we did not meet that standard of 70 parts per billion by August 3rd, 2024. If you look at our design value, we're at 80 parts per billion. So we're at 10 parts per billion over the standard. That forces EPA to make a determination of whether we have attained or not. And EPA has yet to do that because they're waiting on our demonstration of the impact of international emissions before they make that determination. So whether EPA determines we've met the standard or not is centered on us getting this demonstration up to EPA as quickly as possible. Under the Clean Air Act, EPA was required to make that determination back on February 3rd, 2025, and they're currently under a consent decree with the Center for Biological Diversity to make that determination by February 3rd of next year, 2026. So it's important we get this demonstration up there to EPA so that they can determine whether or not we've met the standard. And really what this section of the Clean Air Act law provides, and it is in the Clean Air Act, it's not a regulation, it's in statute. Congress added these in 1990. What this section does, it specifically exempts an ozone non-attainment area from being reclassified, in our case, to a serious area. It can be applied to other classifications as well. If a demonstration can be made that we would have attained the standard by August 3rd, 2024, but for emissions emanating from outside the United States. So the purpose of this demonstration is to show that when you remove the impact of international emissions on our ozone concentrations, we actually meet the EPA standard of 70 parts per billion, and we would have attained back on August 3rd, 2024. And that's the exciting results that Ramble is going to be presenting today. So what's the status of our demonstration? So today, the modeling and analytical work for the demonstration has been completed, and those results are going to be presented to you today. Now, I will acknowledge that this process is a little different than what we have done before. Normally, in your agenda packet, you would have had a report, a draft report available for you to approve. But because we are under such a tight timeline, we don't have that report completed yet. That report will be complete for our policy committees to take action on. So today, what we're doing, we just finished these results this week. We've been pushing Ramble hard to get the results out, and they've been working great to try and meet our timeline. EPA has asked for this presentation as soon as possible. So today, we're presenting you all of the results that we have. The results that we're going to be showing you today are going to be identical to what's going to be included in the report. And that's why we're going to ask you to take action on it based on the results you see today and based on the preliminary work we've shown you in prior committee presentations. Most recently, last month's presentation, and then back in May as well. Like I said, the report is being finalized and prepared for regional council acceptance and submittal to EPA on September 24th, 2025. Because this is just a demonstration report, it's not a SIP submittal. It doesn't have to go through a public comment period like a SIP would. So immediately after the regional council accepts it, we're going to get it up to EPA. So EPA will have it officially on September 24th, 2025, assuming regional council accepts the report. So what's going to be in this report? Here's the structure of the report. First, there's going to be an overview and summary of the findings. That's going to describe all of the technical information that you're going to see today, how it fits together. And this is going to include international impacts from all areas of the globe. So we know we're located relatively close to Mexico, so we know Mexico has an impact on our international emissions, but also we're impacted by Asian transport and other sources throughout the globe. So we're going to be describing that today. So I'm going to summarize that report up front. That's going to be about a 10 to 15 page summary. And then as appendices, we'll have the full Ramble report that's going to be talked today. A lot of the work that goes into this has been done by our own modeling team. For example, the emissions inventories and the meteorology that go into the modeling work that Ramble is doing was developed by MAG staff. So there'll be a report of all of the work that our own staff has done. And then lastly, we've also hired Sonoma Tech, as we've talked about, to do a report on exceedances impacted by wildfires. So we're going to be removing some ozone exceedance days from consideration that were impacted by smoke from wildfires. All of that is going to be inside the report, and that will be the summary of that report will be that the there's overwhelming evidence when you look at all of these different sources to show that we would have attained the standard, but for international emissions. I know in the past, some of the past presentations, we focused maybe a little bit more heavily on Mexico. I want to make it clear that in addition to Mexico, there is also significant impact from Asian transport. So it's not just Mexico. There's also significant parts per billion impact from Asia as well. And so we'll be discussing that today as well. And so lastly, before I hand it over to Ramble, again, at the end of this, there'll be lots of times for your questions and comments. We welcome those. Please ask them at the end. Happy to answer them. But we will be asking for today, the requested action is to accept these modeling analysis for inclusion in the final report. And again, I understand that this is sort of an unusual process. But again, we thought it was better to bring these to the committee instead of just skipping the committee and going straight to policy committee. As soon as work has been done, we've presented it to the committee as fast as possible. But it's been a bit of an unusual process. So I appreciate people's understanding of that as we move forward. And again, ask questions as we go through this. So with that, we've got Chris Emery here. Let me introduce Ramble. Chris Emery from Ramble. And we also have Marco Rodriguez online, who's going to be doing the presentation online. They have been a great consultants to work with and have really put together some great supporting evidence for this documentation. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Marco. And Marco, go ahead and jump in.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you, members of the committee. Today, as Matt just mentioned, we're going to present the technical results of this retrospective demonstration. I just want to acknowledge all the members of my team, including ERG, which also contributed to parts of this presentation. Next. Today, we would like to talk about several parts of this analysis, and the best way to think about it is as a weight of evidence approach in which each element of the analysis on itself, it will have limitations, but when you look at them collectively, they will definitely point to the direction of our conclusions. So today, yes, thank you. Next slide. I think Matt covered this pretty well. These are the reasonings behind why we're doing this demonstration, including the fact that, as he mentioned, Maricopa is clarified as moderate, and the benefits that this demonstration will bring as avoiding reclassification to serious and any future reclassifications. I just wanted to point it out that the fact that this high background ozone that is in essence not due to local emissions makes those local emission controls less responsive. And previous studies from both MAC and EPA have actually shown that there are significant background levels of ozone. So in fact, most of the ozone in Maricopa forms from either natural or foreign anthropogenic emissions. Next. I would like to start with a conceptual model and the new elements that conform this conceptual model. Next. And one of the first things that one asks the question about high ozone concentrations in an area is will this be related to the impacts from wildfires? So these two plots here show different trends from the ozone design value. On the left, we show the design values for ozone starting from the year 2000 up to 2024. And that's that red line that squiggles up and down. You can see that when you draw a trend line, there is about a 0.3 ppb per year slope in reductions, pretty much starting from 2000. But essentially, since 2017, just design value concentrations have been actually in an upward trend. So if you were to actually remove the impacts from wildfires and recalculate the design values, you will get that dotted blue line on the left figure. And what it shows is that as you remove those wildfires, those design value concentrations continue actually having that downward trend. The plot on the right shows the number of exceedance days over Maricopa County non-attainment area monitoring sites, and it shows how many do we have per year. And they also show this downward trend that we observe on the left figure. Except that, of course, as you get close to 2017, there's an upward trend, as I just mentioned. In the figure that we have on the right, the bar chart, we have colored in gray, effectively those days that are associated with wildfire impact days, and they're substantial. They're definitely an important contribution of the design values that we observe in the monitoring sites in Maricopa. Next. If we look at those more closely in a per site basis, which is what these plots are showing, on the left, we see that, in fact, the days that are dominated by wildfire impacts are dominant. I think on average, over 60% of the days for multiple sites have some wildfire impact days. So it's a pretty dominant signal in the ozone design values. And I'm sorry, these are actually exceedances for the 4th highest value. So the design value, as you may remember, is an average of the 3 years, in this case from 2021 to 2023, of the 4th highest measured ozone concentration for a site. So this is a more detailed analysis of the previous slides. So it's looking at the 4th highest, not just the design values on the left. And when you look at that, as I mentioned, wildfire impact days are very dominant. If you were to actually remove those days identified as, impacted by wildfires, and then you were to recalculate the design values, that the plot on the right is what basically you would get. And in many instances, you will see that just removing the wildfire contributions by itself will actually make attain the NAAQS for multiple sites, not all of them, but many of them. So it's important to consider these wildfires, and then the question becomes, okay, even if you remove all the wildfire days, we're still not in compliance with the NAAQS at all sites. What do we do next? What can be done? So if we move to the next slide, please.
Wait. Let me
Yes.
ask you quick there. So, yep. So this is Nancy from Phoenix. So with the removal of the wildfire days, is this an assumption on your guys' part that EPA would approve those as exceptional events? Or are you guys just thinking have they already approved these? Have you already submitted these? Or is this, how did you come up with that? Is this just every wildfire day we've had?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Thank you for that question. I'll jump in, Marco.
Yeah, that's great.
So what we did is every year we meet with ADEQ, Maricopa County, Pinal County, and we get together and we decide which days have been impacted by wildfires. So what is shown here is there were 76 days in that 3-year period between 2021 and 2023 that have been identified as having wildfire impacts. So the analysis that they're going to continue to show, Marco's going to show international contributions with and without wildfire impacts. It's excluding those 76 days. Those 76 days have not yet been approved by EPA. That's why Sonoma Tech's report is part of this demonstration. That includes the technical documentation to exclude these days. Now, there is one additional caveat. Because we don't need all 76 removed in order to demonstrate attainment, and actually you will see that even if we didn't remove any of them, the impact from international emissions alone is enough to demonstrate attainment. So even if we left in all of the days, we still have enough international impact to demonstrate attainment. But we think it's important to acknowledge this. For this report, we ended up picking the 31 most prominent days, and those are the days that are included in Sonoma's report for the design value. When Marco gets a little bit further on in his presentation, you'll see EPA's design value of 80 and then MAG's design value of 77. That 77 is what results when you remove the wildfires for that 3-year period. So we've talked with EPA about this. They are expecting this as part of this demonstration. They're expecting this atypical event report as part of this demonstration. But again, even if we were to leave them in, there's enough international impact to show attainment even without accounting for wildfires. But wildfires do occur and they have been significant. So it's important to acknowledge them in this report as well.
So you are going to be submitting an exceptional event for all of those assumed events that you are included in this 179B? And then,
We're using a process called atypical events, which is different, slightly different than exceptional for modeling. You can use EPA issued a memo in 2019 talking about how you can exclude things for modeling purposes, and this is a modeling exercise. So we'll be officially asking EPA to exclude 31 days to adjust that base design value. So instead of starting at a base of 80, we're going to start at a base of 77.
okay, and this is a question that is 100% subjective. In the past, and I know that is, again, dangerous territory, how many average exceptional events get approved by EPA? Just curious.
Yeah, well, most agencies decide not to submit them because of the level of work required. And like, for example, in this case, if we submitted all of these by itself, it wouldn't do anything. It would only get us to 77, right? We're still over the standard. So most areas decide not to submit exceptional events. The two we have gotten approved before took about a year and a half from EPA. But again, this process is a little bit streamlined. It's the atypical event process because we're not asking them to exclude the events for purposes of showing attainment, just for purposes of modeling. So they should be able to approve it quicker. It's a different level of, there's a different level of evidence required. Thank you. Go ahead, Marco.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we probably want to move to the next slide now. Thank you. So as Matt mentioned, just segueing on what he mentioned, even if we were to exclude all those wildfire impact dates, you will still not get to attainment. So it brings the question of can something else be done about this? Is it possible to really see if the international contributions, allows the design value concentrations go basically attain the NAAQS? So what we did, or one of the initial pieces of the analysis here, is to look at wind roses. The wind roses look at observations at defined places where you have meteorological data available. One of these wind roses is in Phoenix, the other one's in Tucson, and these wind patterns have been averaged all the way from the surface up to 3 kilometers from the surface. The results that we're presenting here are the ones that represent the morning ocean, the morning data available, because it's important to get information about what is the inflow of something, the air parcels into the target area, as opposed to trying to look at the afternoon signal where you have formation and things get outside of your basins. So this gives you an indication of the potential for those ozone precursors to enter the Maricopa non-attainment area. And what you can see is that most of the exceedance days have actually a very deep, very frequent southerly component from the southeast, especially in Phoenix. The site in Tucson is intermediate between, say, Phoenix and Mexico. So it also gives you a sense of, what the potential path of those air masses are as they move from potential sources in Mexico all the way to Phoenix. So this gives you a good indication that at least the transport supports the idea that potentially, sources that exist in Mexico will potentially contribute to ozone concentrations in Maricopa. But this is not the only one. And if we move to the next slide, not only Mexico contributes to the ozone concentrations in Maricopa, there is also the contribution from elsewhere. And the most typical path for this to occur is Asian contributions. Typically, you have a trough that uplifts all sorts of concentrations, including ozone and its precursors. It moves it all into the free troposphere, basically above 10 kilometers, where it's colder, and that allows them to have a longer lifetime. They can travel over a week, and usually when this happens in the summer Western United States, you have high pressure systems that effectively take these concentrations and move them downward to places like Arizona. And in moving downward, it brings these precursors of ozone that can contribute to the formation, in addition to the ozone itself, that can contribute to the local signal in Maricopa. So there's this potential of all these Asian contributions, both precursors and ozone, affecting the area. If we move to the next slide. Thank you. Also, as part of this kind of wave of evidence, our modeling, of course, is the most direct piece of evidence that we're going to show. But over the recent years, say from 2021 up to now, EPA has done different types of modeling, not necessarily for these type of demonstrations, but in support of all sorts of policy assessments. For example, the table on the top represents the international anthropogenic source attribution that EPA did as part of the policy assessments of the 2015 NAAQS. And what you can see for the site in Phoenix, when they did that in 2021, they were obviously looking at the 2018 to 2020 design value of 79 ppv. And out of those, for those 79 ppvs, you can see that the international contribution is actually up to 9. So there's some of the other components of the international that is on the column name mix, but because it's kind of unclear, really. I mean, again, this was not focused specifically on trying to make that attribution. It was done for other type of policy, goals that EPA had. So some of the internationals on the mix too. But if you were to just keep the 8.5, just with that, you would actually be able to attain the NAAQS in the 2018 to 2020 design value for that area. Now, if you look at the second table below, that's a table taken from the EPA interstate transport SIP modeling that EPA did. Has two rows. The project, as you know, they typically do these projections into the future, and that at that time was like a projection into the future. And even though you have in that projection for the 2023 design value something that they said was 70, which is not exceeding the NAAQS, there was a significant component of Canada and Mexico, but in this case, it's really mostly just Mexico contributions of 3 ppv. When you scale that value in the second row to 80 ppv, which was the actual, design value for that year, and then you take basically the percentages that each of the pieces of the source apportionment contribution are, and you apply them to this 80 ppv design value, you will get a value that is almost 3 ppv from northern Mexico. And just to put that in context, that contribution from Mexico is equivalent to what you would get from California and fires together or combined in this modeling assessment. And there's a contribution from the boundary conditions. Again, EPA was not necessarily specifically looking at what will be the international anthropogenic contributions. It's just everything. But we know that some of that it's in that column. And there's more contributions there than it just appears in this table. Again, for context, Arizona own contribution, according to this study, is about 20%. So if we move to the next slide. Another piece of information that is important to look at, if you have the transport, do you have the emissions? How do the emissions look like? So if we move to the next slide. Thank you. So our collaborators at the Eastern Research Group develop emission inventories for Mexico, and MAC provided us with the information related to that. So we have these trends that cover the period of 2017 to 2023. On the top row, we are comparing the NOx emissions. On the bottom row, we're comparing the VOC emissions. For both, on each of the plots, we have first the Maricopa non-attainment area inventory, Then on the right, we have, our estimates for the Mexican border states, which in this case is the states of Baja California, Sonora, and Chihuahua. So what we can see here clearly is Maricopa has a very clear, distinctive downward trend. So Maricopa emissions, for example, for NOx, that's the first figure there on the upper left, have decreased by about 30%, 38%, almost 40% in this period from 2017 to 2023. While if you look at the equivalent in the Mexican side, they actually have increased by 6%. I also want to bring to your attention that these plots are not the same scale. If you look at the scale on the right for Mexico, they actually are 6 to 11 times higher than what you see in Maricopa. So I think that this is very reflective of emissions that are very high in the Mexico area and that have an increasing trend. We can basically get the same sort of trend from the VOCs. The numbers, of course, are vary. Instead of looking at a decrease of 38% on the VOC for Maricopa, it's more like 4%. And the increase in Mexico is more like 2%, about the same as it was in 2017. But again, the scales are not the same. So we're seeing a significant contribution of VOCs as well, which are like 5 to 6 times what we see in the Maricopa non-attainment area. Next. So another piece of information is look at air parcel trajectory analysis. This we can move to the next slide, please. This type of analysis depends on a model called HiSplit. And what it effectively does is looks at the trajectories that a given air parcel, what the path that it will follow in time in the past. So we usually set the target to be our target area. In this case, the target area that you can see is on the bottom left is that gray box that is within the Maricopa non-attainment area. We started these trajectories there, and then we let the model evolve back in time to tell us where these air parcels were in the past. And we run them usually for about 72 hours back in time at different altitudes. So we typically start these at, say, 50, 500, and 1,000, I think. So because you really want to look at the ensemble, the totality of the paths of these trajectories. You cannot really trust the path of a single one. It's not really representative for multiple reasons of just the path of the potential air that gets en route as it gets to Maricopa. So you want to look at the ensemble. And we ran this for, so these are 3D. They are actually in the three-dimensional trajectories that were run for the 160 exceedance days that we have from 2021 and 2023. And for these exceedance days, once we finished the analysis, we were able to identify 4 main patterns in the pathway patterns as they go en route to the Maricopa County area. So the first one on the top left is a north type of pattern that essentially doesn't really pass over Mexico. That happens for 16% of the total trajectories that we analyze. There's a southeast pattern that could potentially bring the precursors and ozone from big cities in Mexico, in Chihuahua, Ciudad Juarez, and the northern eastern part of Mexico. That occurs around for 28% of the trajectories. There's a south component that happens for about 32% of the trajectories and comes from Baja California in Mexico and Sonora. So it brings a lot of the potential emissions from those areas. And finally, there's a west component, which is 24% of the trajectories. And that one has more of a contribution from Mexicali and Tijuana, and of course, California. I would just want to remind people that Mexicali and Tijuana are not small cities. Each one of those are over 1 million people. Tijuana is actually 2 million people. So, the contributions in potential emissions from those urban areas could be significant. If we move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we looked at this and we created an analysis in which we look at what happens during the number of exceedances. As I explained, when you look at all these different colors, which are basically the trajectories that cross at some point in Mexico, is 84% of the trajectories do that. And on the figure on the left, the first bar is basically accounting for all the exceedances. If you were to remove the wildfire impact days and redo the analysis and then look at this, the contribution is very consistent. It's about the same. So it almost doesn't matter. The sort of like the pattern persists, whether you use the totality of exceedance or if you just or if you exclude the atypical wildfire impact exceedance days. So once you know that, we can do a similar exercise like what we have done before, which is take that will be the plot, the figure on your right. We can recalculate the design value by doing this sort of in a stepwise manner. So these are all multiple sites in Maricopa. These are the design values for the period of 2021 to 2023. The orange bar represents the design value considering all days. And of course, as you know, at this point, many or a substantial number of them exceed the NAAQS, which is that red horizontal line. Now, if you were to exclude the wildfire days, that's the gray bar, then you can see that multiple sites now achieve the NAAQS, but not all of them. And if now you keep the wildfires but remove the days that were identified as days for which we have an idea that Mexican transport could influence the concentrations on that day, again, you get a lot of them basically attaining the NAAQS, not all of them, but most of them. And the last column or the last bar in this plot shows what happens when you do both, when you remove the transport days and when you remove the wildfire impacted days. And when you actually do that, all of the sites in this plot attain the NAAQS except for one, PP, which I don't remember what's the name of that.
Gold Peak.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there's just one side where that happens. So I think on average, when you do this exercise of removing the Mexican impacted days and the wildfire impacted days, you essentially are taking about 8.5 ppb on average from the values for which you have for all the values for accounting for the exceedances for all days. We can move to the next slide. So up to now, we have presented a lot of the analysis that are pretty good indicators of, what are the Mexican contributions or the Mexican impacts. But we know even from the EPA modeling that could not be all the impacts that are here. So the source apportionment provides the most direct and the more straightforward in a way to estimate that. The other thing that these other analyses are, again, weight of evidence, they are not really telling us like the exact contribution of what the Mexican sources, contribute to the ozone. It's just the question of if you were to remove those impacts, what would the ozone design value look like? But they don't tell you exactly how much the contributions would be from both the Mexican and the international contributions. That's where the source apportionment comes into play. So next slide. As Matt mentioned, we're effectively relying on the work of their technical staff. They developed this modeling platform that was presented before. It consists of different nested domains shown on the figure on the top, especially the one red one, which is the photochemical modeling domain boundary for what we call the 36-kilometer domain, which is the outer domain. That's where the global boundary conditions enter into these models. And so we are tracking ChemX, which is the photochemical model we're using. It has the ability to internally use tracers or tags that allow you to know what is the exact contribution from these different combinations of groups and regions. So in this case, our source apportionment design relies on 3 different source groups, which are in the table. So we effectively have the contribution of natural sources, which is the group number 2, biogenic and lightning NOx. We also have all the anthropogenic contributions within the domain for both Mexico and the United States side. So we made an account of all the anthropogenic emissions that are in the domain. And we also separate the contribution of fires in the separate from the other 2. The model, but by design, also provides you the contribution of the international, the boundary conditions. The boundary conditions were basically processed in such a way that we have tracers of the boundary conditions that tell us how much of those boundary conditions are due to international anthropogenic versus everything else, which will be US anthropogenic and global natural. The figure on the bottom right shows our regions approach. We effectively divide the domains in 3 major pieces. One that looks at the extent of the Maricopa non-attainment area, kind of in a pale yellow, then in orange, the United States, and then the rest of the domain, which is basically Mexico plus whatever potential international contributions you have from shipping, it's in the red area. So once we set up this, we run the model, we process the results, and that's my next slide. So once we process the results, we process them to calculate design values, which is the, of course, metric that matters to compare with the NAAQS. And we have 3 different ways to calculate this. So the table shows, I guess it's in 2 parts. The first part is like the average of all the sites, and the second part looks at the maximum site design values and provides the results. And within of each of these sections, we have 3 rows. The first one, which is called the EPA, shows essentially what happens when you take the base design value as is, without excluding any of the data points or the observations that you have in that data set. And when you do that, and then you calculate what would be the design value without the full and total international attribution, that's both Mexico and Asia. Instead of having, say, an average value of 75 ppb, which is non-attainment, you actually get to a value of 60 ppb, which means that the international contribution is about 15 ppb. And that's without excluding any wildfires. So, as Matt mentioned at the beginning, this is kind of like the smoking gun in a way that tells you that, yes, you would actually attain the NAAQS just without considering, even if you don't consider the wildfire atypical days. The next 2 rows are doing a consideration of that. So the second row, which we call MAC, is effectively what happens when you use this value called relative response factor, is what actually takes you from the red numbers to the blue numbers. So that's how in the guidance for attainment, there is an algorithm on how to calculate this relative response factor. If you keep that relative response factor that was calculated in the first row, but you were to use the design value that actually excludes the wildfires, that's what we're presenting on that second row. So it's a little bit of a mixing the relative response factor number with the design values that have the wildfire impacted days excluded. And so it takes you from 73 all the way down to 58. Of course, if you have a lower starting point, you would expect to actually go to an even lower value than 60. So it's trending in the right direction for this demonstration. And the last row is what happens if you actually calculate that relative response factor by also excluding those days that are atypical. I want to note that for this table, unlike the other previous results that I have presented, instead of using those 76 atypical days, we are actually using 31. And so it's a smaller data set of the number of days that were excluded for this particular part of the analysis. So that's on the average, and that's great. Like the second part of the table, it's sort of like, well, what happens when you actually look at those sites that have the highest values for the design value, which, you know, it's important to basically have all of them in attainment. And the good news is that, again, even for a value of 80 ppb on one of the monitoring sites, it takes you down to 66, which is clearly in attainment. So, yeah, I think next we can probably move to the next slide. I'm going to go into my conclusions, and I think after that we probably can have as many questions as you may want to have. So conclusions. I guess the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Of course, the most important conclusion that we can get out of this weighted evidence approach, but especially by looking at the most direct piece of evidence, which is the source apportionment, is that Maricopa would have attained the NAAQS by August 3rd, 2024, but for the international anthropogenic emissions. And of course, this is supported by the fact that, one, there's a proximity to the U.S. border. We have demonstrated that the southerly transport is actually frequent. 75 to 80% of the trajectories, show that there's high contributions potentially from the background ozone in Mexico. Point number two, there is persistent summer global circulations that transport pollutants from Asia and North America within days and weeks. So all these ozone concentrations, get uplifted and sink eventually into the Western US, and that brings ozone to the surface. There's even some recent published literature that indicates that this ozone aloft is trending upward. If we move to the next slide. Point number three, we have presented recent EPA modeling results in Maricopa, and those results suggested that foreign contributions are definitely higher than 8.5 ppb, which when you look at the design value for that study, makes you to be at 7.5, which means that you would actually be attaining the NAAQS for that design value in that year. Other study from EPA shows that at least 2 ppb can be attributed to northern Mexico, while you see that the Arizona own contribution is about 20%. Point number four, when you looked at the emissions, we have seen that there's decades of reductions in the emissions while the ozone is increasing. So, there's increased drought, there's wildfires, and all these wildfires have shown to have an impact on regional ozone. In fact, 60% of the exceedance days since 2017 are in some way or the other associated with wildfires. But when you remove them, the Maricopa design values kind of are flat, and which is a good indicator that these wildfires have a significant effect. Maricopa emissions have declined in the period of 2017 to 2023. In the case of NOx by almost 40%, in the case of VOCs by 4%. In that same period of time, the Mexican emissions from the three northern border states have increased on both for NOx and VOCs. And, the total and per capita, emissions from these states are several times larger than what we have in Maricopa. So next slide. So when we look at the transport and the patterns that we did in our analysis for the back trajectories, we see that, say, 3 out of 4 air trajectory patterns in the period of time where we have these exceedance days from 2021 to 2023 pass over some portion of Mexico. And, this is consistent regardless of if you look at the 116 exceedance days or the days where we have excluded the wildfire impacts. So when that happens, we see when we exclude the days for which we see patterns of transport from Mexico, the design values decrease from 80 to 69 ppb, which is an average of 8.4 ppbs. And finally, I think that the piece of evidence, again, that is more direct into this and includes not only the Mexican emissions, but also the explicitly through the boundaries, the contributions from Asia and elsewhere, show that, there's about 15 ppb contribution from all these international anthropogenic sources. And regardless of the method that you use to calculate these design values, you effectively have these projected design values to be anywhere between 40 ppb to maybe 60 ppb. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I welcome all your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. That was very informative. Just going to move to the next slide, please, if you can. Whoops, not that one. There we go. This is our time for questions and comments. So, Madam Chair, if there's, open it up for the committee.
Thank you, Matt, Chris, and Marco. Do any members have questions or comments?
This is Nancy from Phoenix, and of course, I have a lot of comments, so I'm going to be quiet and let other people get their comments in before me, so maybe someone will have my comments first.
Does anyone online have questions or comments? Looks like, Nancy, everyone's waiting for you.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well,
take it away.
First of all, I want to say that I do appreciate the timeline. I understand that it is an aggressive timeline and that has to be done. But I do have some questions about the presentation, and I would like the meeting minutes to reflect my concerns on this in light of the ask of the committee today. So first of all, it is, Matt and I talked earlier, and it is international transport. In my opinion, what I saw today, international transport was not described sufficiently. Mexico was described, but Asia was not described to the detail that I would like to see. And having said that, I understand that the draft report may have additional information in there about international transport, but I don't feel like I understand that, especially when the conclusion slides today talked about international and Asia, but we did not see the numbers associated with that. Another point I'd like to put to that is Mexico was talked about a lot. And in previous meetings of this committee, and I understand I was not here last time, we did say that data from Mexico was hard to get. So there was no discussion, and it may be in the report, I don't know, it may be in the report, there may be a discussion of where that data came from. So I would like to see that. I'd like to understand that. If we are saying our international transport here is responsible for our non-attainment, then I want to know where that data comes from, and I want to see a better discussion of that international. So Mexico is described quite a bit in there.
Nancy,
and
before you move on to your next points, just so we don't lose
Okay.
track, could we have any answer on that, and then we'll take it back to your other, just so we don't lose track of what questions we're trying to answer and miss anything from you.
Sure, I'll do a couple kind of overview kind of comments to that, and I'll let Chris and Marco kind of jump in as well. Certainly, the bulk of the Asia impact is represented in that source apportionment modeling. That includes boundary conditions and Mexico as a whole, but we can certainly make in the written report a distinction and make that more clear. That's something we're happy to do as part of the write-up. Yeah, so we can certainly do that. I'll let Chris jump in if you want to add anything more.
Oh, yeah, you covered it. We'll try to delineate that more. There is a substantial section in the report about the Asian transport and what EPA's conceptual model is. We showed that one large picture of the arrows crossing the Pacific Ocean. There's a whole dialogue, there's a whole narrative about what that picture means and how that was derived. It was actually developed by an international consortium of air quality agencies, both European and US. So that's got a pretty decent pedigree, and that's described with references in the report.
Do you know when we'll get that draft report?
We're working on that as soon as possible.
Yeah, so obviously the drop dead date obviously is September 17th. That's when it has to be in the packet for regional council approval. I'm hoping it'll be available a couple days before that. So sometime in the second or third week of September, and we'll get it out to everybody.
So on that same note, so there was one slide and I wrote it down and can't find it now. That's the way it goes. There's 4 maps where you've got north, south, east, and west, and you've got the southwest, and you're actually showing the transport paths. There's one, you're right there, that south and west. You don't have a good description there of those paths coming, and it may be that we just can't see it. But it looks like you're getting transport out. I mean, that's going over the ocean, especially on the west side that's coming through California. That's not, I mean, everything in there is Mexico and California, well, Baja. So you just need, and the report may say it, but what we're being asked for today and what the presentation is didn't answer those questions for me. So when we're talking about international, I think it needs to be more clear that it is international. And the one for north, that could be construed of Canada, but I don't know. And there are slides before where you had some tables and you had various acronyms which may be described somewhere, but we don't know what those were. One of them was BC. Is that British Columbia or is that border conditions? I don't know. And when you look, you see that and then you see that slide, I'm not sure what that is. And so I feel like I need to know that for this. A quick question, very general on a 179B demonstration. Is that one and done? How often do you redo that?
It's one and done.
So you would not, redo that. That finding, that evaluation would remain final.
Correct.
And so so that information is never updated.
As far as we've seen, so EPA has approved these before for El Paso and Imperial Valley, and they have not had to do updates. Are you aware of any updates, Chris?
No.
Yeah, no, you only have to do
Okay.
it once.
Okay.
Yeah, and BC, by the way, is supposed to represent boundary conditions. So certainly on those west transport days, those are also days where there's an assumption that we're getting transport from Asia possibly as well. But yes, obviously this slide did highlight the Mexico ones just because that was one of the focuses of it when it was being put together. But again, we can make it clearer.
And that's my concern is we don't have the report. So I don't have any of that backing information. We're asked to make a recommendation today.
Yeah.
And I feel that we need to understand this thoroughly. And especially if we're going to be saying, that we've been presented with this information before, and that reference is to previous presentations, and this is the presentation, and it doesn't have those references in that. It's important from my perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just highlight too again that we are not planning on changing any of these results. So the results you are seeing today will be the results that are in the final report. So we are not, if anything changes, it will be for clarification standpoint. It won't be for, it won't affect any of the conclusions that Marco showed or any of the numbers in terms of the percent contribution. We're going to lead with that. Again, Ramble's report is an appendix to the entire report. So when I summarize everything together, really the main body of evidence is going to be the source apportionment study that Ramble has done, that 15 part per billion impact, which includes Mexico and Asia and anything else, Canada, all of the international impact. That will be our primary primary piece of evidence. All of these other pieces are additional weight of evidence pieces in the report.
And I know that we discussed wildfires earlier. I'm assuming that the Mexico data includes their wildfires as well.
The emissions data does, yes.
And those are not excluded, only the US wildfires.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because we can't, there's not a regulatory mechanism right now to exclude. You can use the exceptional event process if you can identify, but Mexican wildfires, you tend to burn all the time everywhere, so you can't really identify one particular fire necessarily. But again, those emissions are included in there. We haven't excluded wildfire emissions. That makes our report more conservative, because if you took those out, theoretically, you would get even a higher international impact. So in some ways, we're being very conservative with how we're treating wildfires.
And that's discussed in the data portion of the report, I would assume.
Yeah, that's largely the work that we're doing, our appendix, because we develop all the emissions data. We develop all the emissions data that goes into the model. We develop all of the meteorological data that goes into the model, hand that over to Ramble to do all these analyses. And again, given the timeline, yeah, normally you would have seen all of that. And so what we've tried to do is summarize it. So you got the main points that we'll be making in this demonstration that the public will see, and they can go through the details in the appendix. So we really wanted to present to you today the main points, the main body of evidence, that there's overwhelming evidence. It's not like we're close, right? I think there was concern at some point, like we're just barely going to make it. This is pretty obvious that if you got rid of international anthropogenic emissions, we would quite clearly attain.
Do you have other ones, Nancy?
My thing still stands with the international part. With the presentation, where the summary is written, I don't see the international, I see Mexico. And I think that needs to be clearer. I'm very uncomfortable with the ask on that, with the summary written and without having that report in my hands.
We'll do that. And you know this, I mean, to be fair, Mexico is international, right? So it is
international, but they're not the only international.
Exactly. And so they're both in there, but we'll make it clear. Yeah.
Did we get things thinking? And is there any other comments or questions from the members online? From those discussions? Thank you very much, Nancy. That's always helpful to get some thoughts on that. So prior to voting, so this is an action item, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on agenda item number 4. I have not received any requests to speak cards for this agenda. MAG staff, have we received any online written comments for agenda item number 4?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No written comments were received.
Thank you. Okay, before we make a motion, I just want to say, I think we need to build a dome. Is that the answer? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, sorry. Okay, that was a long presentation, but thank you very much. So is there a motion to recommend acceptance of the modeling analysis of the impact of international emissions on ozone concentrations in the Maricopa non-attainment area for inclusion in the Clean Air Act, Section 179B, retrospective demonstration to be submitted to the EPA administrator? And you can just say so moved, but I need someone to say, to respond.
Madam Chair?
Oh, is that Megan?
This is Megan Sheldon from the City of Glendale. I move to recommend acceptance of this modeling analysis.
Thank you, Megan. Do we have a second?
Kim Butler from Maricopa County, I'll second.
Thank you, Kim. All right. So we have a motion from Megan Sheldon and a second from Kim Butler. A roll call vote will be taken at this time by Lisa Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please state your vote. Taylor Campbell Mosley.
Aye.
Thank you. Zachary Dorn.
Abstain.
Thank you. Beverly Chanowski.
Aye.
Thank you. Tom Ekron.
Aye.
Thank you. Kim Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Mike Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you. Jacob McDavid.
Aye.
Thank you. Megan Sheldon.
Aye.
Thank you. Pete Burrell. Rick Williams.
Aye.
Thank you. Kim Butler.
Aye.
Thank you. Nicole Clements.
Aye.
Thank you. Jennifer Peterson.
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy Allen.
Abstain.
Thank you. Anu Jane.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair Simpson.
Aye.
Thank you. Ryan Templeton.
Aye.
Thank you. Tim Connor.
Aye.
Thank you. Brody Lynn.
Aye.
Thank you. Jonathan Fudge.
Abstain.
Thank you. Christina Hopez.
Aye.
Thank you. Arden Holloway.
Aye.
Thank you. Susie Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, the motion passes with 3 abstentions.
Thank you. And we do look forward to the report and maybe some clarification as identified so that it's clear for those that when it comes before the regional council, we'll have answered some of those questions. Thank you. All right. Item number 5, EPA proposed rule to rescind the 2009 endangerment finding and repeal greenhouse gas vehicle standards. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion and will be presented by Laura Ballard, Maricopa Association of Governments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, my name is Laura Ballard. I'm a senior air quality planner in the environmental division here at MAG. As described in your agenda packets, on August 1st, 2025, the EPA published a proposed rule to rescind the EPA's administrator's prior findings in 2009 that greenhouse gas emissions from new motor vehicles and engines contribute to air pollution, which may endanger public health or welfare. EPA also proposes to repeal all greenhouse gas emission standards for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles and engines. Today, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the proposed rule and share potential impacts for the region. In 1999, a rulemaking petition was filed by 19 private organizations, which called on EPA to regulate greenhouse gases from on-road vehicles. In 2003, EPA denied the petition, stating that the Clean Air Act did not give them the authority to regulate greenhouse gases, and that even if there were air pollutants defined in the Act, the EPA may decline to issue standards for motor vehicles as a policy decision. The case was in appeals court for several years, primarily disputing standing and, of course, the legality of the arguments under the Supreme Court decision, arguments until the Supreme Court decision in 2007, Massachusetts versus EPA. In the suit, the court found 2 primary legal conclusions. The court found that the greenhouse gases are air pollutants covered in the Clean Air Act, and EPA had authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from new motor vehicles if the administrator makes an official reasoned judgment under Clean Air Act Section 202A1. So following the suit, the EPA initiated a process of making the said judgment, and in 2009, EPA issued the endangerment and cause or contribute finding for greenhouse gases under Section 202A of the Clean Air Act and what is commonly referred to as the endangerment finding. The 2009 endangerment finding concluded that concentrations of well-mixed greenhouse gases endanger human health and the environment of current and future generations via climate change, and that the greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles and engines cause or contribute to dangerous air pollution. The 2009 endangerment finding was also under judicial review in appeals court in 2010 and was later dismissed. The EPA has also been petitioned several times under the first Trump administration for reasons of insufficient evidence. In 2001, the EPA backed up previous petition denials with a lengthy response stating the petitions for consideration were deficient arguments and that the evidence provided are based on robust and compelling evidence. The endangerment finding is a term used to describe a set of findings the EPA has made under the Clean Air Act, which in this case established emission standards for new motor vehicle engines. The Clean Air Act specifically requires EPA to regulate any air pollutant from the class of vehicles. As a result of the finding, or the endangerment finding, it has been the basis for tailpipe emissions regulations since model year 2012, as well as the basis for additional greenhouse gas regulating rules under the Clean Air Act. It has been a legal foundation for the U.S. climate regulations for 16 years, ranging from vehicle emission standards to limits on coal-fueled power plants. So to fast forward to now, we have, in 2025, we have a recent proposed rule to reconsider the endangerment finding and greenhouse gas vehicle standards based on that finding. So why the reconsideration? EPA explains in the proposed rule 3 primary purposes for the proposal. One, that the Clean Air Act Section 202A does not authorize the EPA to prescribe emission standards to address global climate change. Reason number 2, EPA previously unreasonably analyzed the scientific record and developments that cast doubt on the reliability of those findings. And third, the technology does not exist to address greenhouse gas emission controls without causing greater harm to the public and welfare. Other reasons EPA states for the reconsideration include costs and contradictions with recent Supreme Court findings. The repeal is framed as a cost-saving measure from regulations that have already cost Americans $1 trillion in compliance. The proposal is projected to save Americans $54 billion in costs annually, though the repeal of the greenhouse gas standards, including the electric vehicle mandate. EPA states that the regulations justified through the endangerment finding puts a burden on American families and businesses and increased costs for consumers. In addition, several recent Supreme Court findings listed here have significantly clarified the scope of what EPA can and cannot do unless it is passed through acts of Congress. So what's in the proposal? The repeal would include all greenhouse gas tailpipe emission standards for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles and engines for model years 2012 to 2027. This includes 8 federal rules related to engine and vehicle emissions, electric vehicle mandates that require shifting the national vehicle fleet from one type of vehicle and vehicle fuel to another. However, the rule as proposed specifically calls out and keeps or retains regulations necessary for criteria air pollutants, which are the ones MAG and other local agencies implement standards for. It also does not impact requirements for air toxic measurements and standards, corporate average fuel economy, also known as the CAFE standards or testing, and any associated fuel economy labeling requirements. These latter regulations all remain unchanged. In addition to the vehicle standards, any regulation that uses the EPA endangerment findings analytical framework will be impacted through this action. This includes new source performance standards for CO2 and methane for crude and natural gas facilities, greenhouse gas standards for fossil fuel electric generating units, and greenhouse gas emission standards for aircraft. So looking ahead, the timeline is moving fast. August 1st was the proposed rule. EPA noticed in the Federal Register and held several virtual public hearings last week with over 1,000 signed up to testify. As of yesterday, there were approximately 300 comment letters received on the docket for this proposal. The EPA did issue a comment period extension to the original comment deadline. The comment period currently ends September 22nd. Now I'll shift over to what are the possible impacts to the MAG region. MAG's air quality planning is for criteria air pollutants like carbon monoxide, ozone, and particulate matter. This rule does not directly impact MAG's air quality planning work and would not impact existing control measures in the MAG air quality plans. For example, vehicle emissions inspection programs and supporting programs will all remain. The region could see a change if voluntary greenhouse gas reductions discontinue. Other possible impacts in the region are included as some existing greenhouse gas regulations provide for co-benefits of VOC and NOx reductions according to EPA's prior analyses. These co-benefits may no longer occur if the greenhouse gas regulations are repealed. If the rule is finalized as proposed, EPA would no longer require engine and vehicle manufacturers to measure, control, and report greenhouse gas emissions. With litigation likely, we expect a period of uncertainty related to the greenhouse gas regulations across the board. Thank you. That concludes my overview. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Laura. As per usual, unknown is what we're in, right? So do any members have any questions or comments?
I will have a question and comment, of course. So the repeal of the endangerment finding, from my perspective, is a significant downturn for us, because while all greenhouse gases are air pollution, not all air pollution is greenhouse gases. And as said in the presentation before, ozone seems to be trending upwards. And I don't believe right now, from what I've seen in the scientific literature, that it is 100% understood. And so repealing something like this, as has been in place for so long, could have unforeseen consequences that we're just not aware of right now. The impact on NOx and VOCs, I think, would be significant for us. It would even change the information and the work that's already been done by this organization. So from my perspective, that is a disservice to region, the Southwest and the United States.
Thank you. And I think the time period has been extended for comments. So if anyone still wants to make comments, those are available on the EPA. Any other comments from online? This item was just for information only, and we appreciate MAG keeping us apprised and aware of what's coming, even though I think it will be tied up for a while in the courts. So, all right, item number 6, MAG Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee Chair and Vice Chair appointments are ending December 31st, 2025. This item is on the agenda for information only. The Chair and Vice Chair appointments of MAG Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee are due to expire on December 31st, 2025. According to the MAG Committee Operating Policies and Procedures, officers for the technical committees serve 2-year terms, sometimes a little extra, with succession of positions occurring through the ascending order of officers. The policies and procedures also state the chair and vice chair must be from a MAG member agency. The vice chair will ascend to the chair position, and a new vice chair will be approved by the MAG Regional Council Executive Committee. Letters of interest are being solicited for a new vice chair, preferably from a Central Valley or East Valley member agency, just for purposes of regional balance. The letters of interest are required to be submitted by September 30th, 2025. Please refer to today's meeting agenda packet for more information. So item number 7 is a request for future agenda items. Are there any requests from the membership for an item on a future agenda? And as always, if you don't think of anything right now, you can certainly submit online. They have a email that we can submit items. So now we don't have to actually make some motion for this, so this is good. The next meeting of the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee will be on Thursday, September 25th, 2025 at 1:30. With no further business, today's meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.